Hello and welcome to the 35th edition of Half Hour, a podcast starring me, John Paulo Gittisi, as your host. In today's episode, I'll discuss first impressions of Europe with Michael Staudt. Thank you for coming on the show, man.
Dan, thank you for having me on, man.
No problem, dude. I appreciate you coming on, even though you're on vacation right now.
Yeah.
But if you want to just start off and tell us a little about yourself, like where you come from, like what you're doing, like in school or whatever.
Yeah, so I am a junior in college. I'm going into biomed, and I'm transferring to the University of Arizona in fall. So I'm very excited,
That's cool.
I'm from Prescott, Arizona. I moved there about 8 years ago, and I honestly haven't left the U.S. until now, So it is really, really great to actually, get out of the country and just see our world,
Yeah, absolutely. Did you do a lot of internal travel, like domestic travel in the U.S.?
Absolutely, yeah. So most of my folks, they are in Texas and on the East Coast.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So family reunions, weddings, all sorts of things like that.
Yeah, so you've been...
I was traveling, Yeah.
That's such a stark difference from my family. We're all in New England. People moved in and they didn't really leave. I don't know. I can't say that I have any family members outside of it. I mean, people have lived elsewhere, but everyone usually just kind of remains there. It's kind of strange. I don't know. Both sides of my family even. I remember our mutual friend Tristan, who I think was episode 28. If you guys want to go check it out, he mentioned something similar. Maybe not in the episode, but he said that a lot of people out west have this kind of dynamic where it's like they're moving around all the time and seeing things.
Exactly.
But man, what was it like when you saw the first highway sign? I remember when I flew in here. I hadn't been to a country myself, until 2020 when I exchanged here the first time. I hadn't been to a country that didn't speak English as its main language until that point. Okay, I went to the Dominican twice, but, I was on a resort and I was 11, so I don't, it was kind of different. But I remember when I landed here and I saw the first street signs in Czech, I'm like, what am I looking at, man?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
No, I felt the exact same way. I have this app that helps you teach languages called Duolingo.
Love Duolingo, man.
Dude, I love it, man.
I got a 70-day streak right now.
Attaboy, dude. I see you, man.
I'm trying.
Putting in that work, dude.
I gotta actually add you as my friend on there.
Okay, bet.
You can add friends on there. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, no.
I send Tristan a high five sometimes, dude. It's kind of funny.
No, but it is neat, how that helps to sometimes help you adjust to places like that, because I was trying to learn some Czech, but it's just such a big difference.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
It is.
Because I'm a bilingual in Spanish, so I've been using that for a long time, and I know some ASL. But other than that, and a little bit of German, the Czech language is totally different.
Yeah.
So yeah. I saw that sign for the very first time, and, I'm going, whoa, okay, hold on a second,
It's super interesting because if we're talking language families, Slavic, a lot of Slavic people have told me this, that the numbers are about the same for each country. That's about it, though. That's... The numbers are pretty mutually intelligible, but beyond that, there's some things, but it's such a strange kind of understanding because they are more, they're more in the interior of the continent of Europe, the Slavic countries, French and English and Spanish, these groups of people went out and they, colonized all these places, and now there's speakers of these languages everywhere, but the actual structure of these Slavic languages is so different, than English. And I will say it's nice that they're phonetic, they're spelled exactly like how they sound. which I kind of like. But there are just some letters, man, that I have a hard time with. There's the R with the V on top.
Oh,
I forget what they call that, man. I don't remember the word. But it's called like Ursh. It's like an Ursh sound.
Ursh?
Yeah.
Interesting. Huh.
But man, hearing people speak another language around me that isn't like Spanish, or like, where I'm from, you hear Portuguese pretty often too.
Oh, okay.
These two languages, like other than those two, I came out here and I heard Czech and I was like, what? I was like, what, man? Like, I feel like the closest thing, I mean, growing up in the U.S. and you have like the movie culture, right? Like, you hear it and you're like, oh, that's Russian. Like, it's a Slavic language, but Russian's a little more like, Czech is very hard. It's like very like, very well put together. Russian's a bit more fluid. That's what I think though. Like, that's like the vibe I get from these things. But man, it's cool. It's really cool, man.
Yeah, no, I really, really liked being in the international airports, because I had this transfer flight in Oslo.
Norway.
In Norway,
oh, wow.
yeah. And everything there was so clean, organized, oh my goodness. And what's really interesting is that a lot of them thought that I was Norwegian. So, like, they were using Norse with me, and I'm going, sorry, but I have no idea. I am so lost right now. And they're like, oh, English, I'm sorry, But it was neat, like, going across, like, all the terminals and gates, hearing all these different languages.
Yeah, man.
And trying to figure out what they were actually using.
Yeah, it's strange.
Yeah.
I remember I got an ear out here, in the sense where it was like I was listening to what people were. I don't know what they're saying, but I can recognize like which language it is. I think pretty well. Like I know French when I hear it. I know German when I hear it. I will say that Norwegian and like even Dutch. Like I remember there was a newspaper. I was in Tromsø, Norway, way up in the north. I was looking at the northern lights.
Wow.
Man, that was crazy. But anyway, they had like a newspaper and it said something about Trump, man. It was like his face was all weird and like it was like something. But the way the sentence was structured, it said something about him. I don't know. Of course, I could only read Trump and then there were things about him. But these languages are very similar to English, but not like quite there. Like it doesn't have an allegory. Like Spanish and Portuguese are similar. Like, my buddy told me he can understand Spanish and he speaks fluent Portuguese. There's just some, like, word differences. Yeah. Even Italian and Spanish, the grammar there is, like, I think 75% the same, the words. Damn. About. Wow. 70 maybe. But it's cool in Europe because everything, like, flows into each other, Like, things kind of, like, it's very messy. And in the U.S., I think we're very used to this, like, very, like, kind of the same. Whereas in Europe, it's more multilateral, I guess is the word I would use. But yeah, you said, so you got here first. Like Prague is the first place you went. That's cool, man. That's cool.
Yeah.
And for me, it was the same. Continental Europe. Prague is the first for me. Nice. My brother also, his first place is Prague. He came and visited me with my family in December.
Attaboy.
Yeah.
Nice.
Prague won, actually, 3 years in a row, the most beautiful city.
Wow.
Yeah, they won like an award of some kind.
I can see why though. Oh my goodness, man. Wow.
It's a beautiful city.
No, it's I can say that my first couple of hours here, I just wasn't processing it.
Yeah.
Like seeing all of the sidewalks having like all these individual tiles, almost like a mosaic in a sense, and then seeing like all these apartments and shops and different buildings and huge churches, and I'm going, wow.
Yeah.
We're not in Kansas anymore, are we? You know what I'm saying? But,
dude, and the old buildings, man, and the ruins. And, dude, you've actually had quite the experience just coming here for these few days. I mean, him and I and also a few others, we climbed the tallest mountain in the Czech Republic. And I was saying how I think a great way to experience a country is to go to the capital city and then go hiking, somewhere in the vicinity. If it's like a smaller European country like Czech Republic or Slovakia or Hungary or Austria, like these kind of like mid-sized states. But you get to see so much, you know, and like technically you were in Poland too, if you really think about it. You kind of walked in there a little bit. But you went to Germany yesterday, Dresden.
Yes.
How was that?
That was amazing. So part of it was that we came in on Ascension Day, which is a holiday for when Jesus rose from the dead on that third day.
Oh wow!
Or wait, I'm sorry. I got them mixed up. I think it was when he ascended into heaven. I think that's what this day is about. And people were so it was kind of interesting because a lot of the main shops and malls were all shut down. And my friend and I were really confused by this. I'm like, it's like noon right now, almost 1. Why is everything shut down?
Yeah.
But there were a lot of people walking around, and there was a lot of EDM, man. A lot of EDM, you know. It was just very, very neat.
They love it
know?
here. They love it here.
Yeah, no. Oh my gosh, man. You know, it was very, very neat though. I tried using my German a bit at the markets and this fair that we went to.
Was that in like kind of like the square?
Yeah.
I think I was there.
Oh, you were?
I went with him actually. I went with him a different time.
Oh, nice. Okay.
What was that like though?
It was so neat, you know.
Like, were you able to really, maybe not like really put it to use, but like use enough of it and then hear enough of it to kind of be like, okay, I spoke German today?
Absolutely. I know that when we went to this one park, and this huge church, I was hearing people talking in German, and I was picking up words here and there.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was ordering food, I was using German as much as I could, and that was really, really neat, you know. So it seems like it's a very different culture there too, in that if I'm comparing the Czech Republic to Germany,
Mm-hmm.
it seems like the Germans are a little less reserved.
Okay.
If that makes any sense. Part of it may have been because it was a holiday.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I've been told, like, Germans take holidays very seriously.
Yeah, they do.
You know, but there were some very outgoing people. You know, we had a couple people come up to us and say, "Hey, are you from America? How do you like our city?" You know, and it was really, really cool. It was like, wow, you know, it was very immersive feeling. So
yeah, it's such an interesting culture there. I mean, I've been to a few places in Germany. I've been to Dresden, Berlin, I think Regensburg, or no, maybe it wasn't Regensburg. It was Nuremberg. I went to Nuremberg.
Wow.
That was a really interesting place, man. It was really beautiful, and the history there obviously kind of speaks to itself. Mm-hmm. You know, the World War II stuff, but man,
definitely.
Like, it was weird. I went to Stuttgart. I've been to a few cities actually in Germany, and I can tell you that I've driven on the Autobahn.
Oh, what?
Yeah, man. But the car was so slow. Like there were people behind us who kept flashing the lights.
Oh no!
Dude, I had my foot on the pedal all the way.
No.
You know, a little European like Toyota, right?
Yeah.
So, but man, I'll tell you, they're a very organized people. They keep their cities very clean for the most part. I think Berlin was actually, some parts of it were pretty dirty, man. Like I was a little disappointed sometimes in Berlin, but I think Berlin's a really nice city as well. Mm-hmm. But really, man, like nothing matches Prague to me, because Prague is just so. It's such a great size for a city. It's like 1 million people, maybe a little more, and you know everything fits very well. And the transport network, I can't talk enough about it. I really can't. You know, Tristan and I had a whole episode on transportation, but essentially, to kind of recap that and like kind of like give my view on it, it is such a useful tool for tourists, for students, for people who live in the city regularly that don't really leave, like they, maybe their relatives will come pick them up and they'll go to the countryside or something. Mm-hmm. But the public transport system in Prague is, I think, one of the best in the world. Now, nothing's the fastest, right? I mean, the metro is not the fastest in the world. Neither are the trams, but they work. I've only had maybe 1 or 2 problems in my entire stay here since
Wow.
those first few weeks when I came here, and then COVID shut it down, and then when I came back in August of 2021. This whole time I've had no problem.
Wow.
Like, really, but I don't know. What do you think about it? I mean, this is unlike anything we have in our cities in the U.S.
No, so sometimes when I've gone to New York, I know that I used a lot of their public transportation, and it's very filthy, and it's very chaotic. Like, you'll just have, like, all these cracked out people doing all these weird things,
Yeah, man.
And, like, here, it was so clean and quiet, fast, and it was just like everywhere. It felt so interconnected, Yeah. So I was really, really thankful that. So from what I've seen down in their metro, it's very, very convenient because they have 3 different railways.
Yeah.
And you don't have to go up and down, and
it's like the platform is.
Yes,
yeah. It seems logical.
All right there.
Like,
it's so much more logical.
Yeah.
As you said, it's just like, wow, this is really convenient.
From when I was president at UNIP, I guess I'm technically still president, but it's kind of like I'm graduating in a month. My vice president at the time told me that the Soviets built this metro system partially to keep the Czechs happy in the Warsaw Pact, but also because like they needed it, and I think the Soviets helped finance it and they helped build it. But communism doesn't work, and these people remember that. Like they know the price, and they're one of the biggest suppliers to Ukraine, like per capita or something.
Wow.
But this metro system is absolutely incredible. I mean, it dunks on whatever the U.S. has, like, honest
Definitely
to God,
does.
in terms of structure. And, like, for example, in my city, Boston, we have the oldest metro system in the United States. But it's old, and you'd expect it, like it doesn't work right,
Yeah.
And I'm not going after the MBTA right now, but the fact that you have to go up, over, and then back down because the trains run in the middle, the lack of foresight, like I don't know what they were thinking, but the way that they did it here, it's much newer here, the 1970s. Ours was built in like turn of the century, like 1900 something, 1890s, I don't know. It just the way it works here, the everything is very on time too. And a lot of Czechs tell me, they're like, oh, these trains aren't on time. They're pretty on time from what I've seen. I mean, the latest I've seen a tram come is like 3 or 4 minutes later, like max, maximum, and they're never early. Like there are these boards that you see all over the city for the tram network, and you can learn how to read them pretty easily. It tells you the time, it tells you like the day of the week, and then the time that the tram's going to come and what number the tram is. And I don't have a phone plan out here, and I've been relying on that, getting to places. And it's been pretty much bulletproof. I mean, maybe once or twice I was waiting, but man, like, and you learn to recognize these signs. Like you'll see this giant red kind of metal sign, and you're like, well, I know where to go. Like that's what it is.
Okay.
Whereas in the U.S., I feel like it's so messy. It's a mess. Like the public transport is a mess, and I feel like we have a lot. One of my impressions of being here after 2 years is we have a lot to learn in this field, and I think the Czechs have it. They really do.
Absolutely. No, I mean, even being here for now almost 5 days, it's just a total contrast,
Yeah, it is.
One thing that I really like about Prague and Dresden was the diversity.
Oh yeah.
Holy cow! And just
you didn't expect it, right? It's like it's kind of
I mean, like when I was younger, maybe in like junior high and into like early high school, cool too.
Mm-hmm.
When people talk about Germany, I'm like going, oh, okay, so like Germans, right?
Yeah.
But when I went there, it was really neat to like see all these different cultures. There was a lot of Turkish influence I saw.
Of course, yeah.
There were a lot of Russians I saw.
Mm-hmm.
There were also Germans, but there were also a lot of English too, and it was just so neat seeing all that and going, wow, how incorporating all this is.
It's really different from the Europe that, we're taught, where you have these lines in the ground and like, this is Germany and they speak German here.
Uh-huh.
And, while that is still true, it's kind of like you look at what you're saying, and I can agree as well. I mean, like, I've been to Germany, even in Prague too. It's the same kind of dynamic, but I had a European Union class, and we had 3 of these classes, but we were talking about how the EU sees itself as like a multilateral institution. There's so many different countries, and they're all like, and everything's mixing. Like, it's more, actually, in a way, it's more of a melting pot than we are, because we're like one big pot, and there's like several different ones here, and they're scooping everything into everything, and there's people from outside Europe that are coming in as well.
Yeah.
And you take a look at the world map, and Europe and Africa are pretty much like right in the middle. Obviously, but Europe really is a destination for people of all different colors and religions and creeds, like all these things, and they come here. I was kind of blown away at the diversity of even my school. I mean, I think we have roughly 1,000 students, and you could name a country, and there's probably a student from there.
Wow.
Even outside of Europe, like you could just name one, and you'd probably find someone there who's from there. I'd say most of us are European. A lot of people from Central Asia. Not too many Asian students, actually. Now that I think about it, not too many. You get people from the Middle East, and then you get a lot of people from North America as well. Not too many Americans, but you get a fair amount. But very few from South America, but and some from Africa too, actually. But you get a lot of Europeans from either side of the continent, and it's just such a melting pot, even in my school. And I didn't expect that at all. Like, I came here thinking, man, I'm going to be like immersed in this Czech culture, and I'm going to come back speaking Czech and like all these things. And I know a few words, but it's, but what a tremendous opportunity, even for you to come here, and visiting your friend, and being out here in Europe, man, like for the first time. I know that, I came here at 19, actually. I came here at 19, and I remember that was a big deal. That was a big deal. Like, my family was like, wow, like, this is crazy. You're going to Europe, like, it's like a big deal. It's like different than going to, like, I don't know, like even flying to Florida is like a step more inside, but this is totally different. But I have to say, I feel like I have learned quite a bit that you wouldn't learn like in America, just by the nature of it, how diverse it is here. But also, even in my school, like the people in my school, I've learned so much from these people, like about their culture and about like who they are and what country they come from and what they do there. That you just learn things you can't really pick up in a book or like on YouTube or something. Like it's really different,
No, so my friend, he has this Armenian roommate, and so my first night here, his roommate had a bunch of his friends come over, and it was really, really cool, like hearing them talk about their like culture and their hospitality. It was incredible, and such good food. And personally, I think that like having a meal with someone is such a great way to like get to know them, get to know their background and their culture and just who they are.
Yeah, I like that actually.
And it's just so neat, like how I've just been getting to have so many opportunities to meet all these people and get more immersed into this amalgamation, you know. So I would definitely come back here, you know. It's just so amazing here, and I think that, as you said, us as Americans have a lot to learn. One thing that I really admired about them is that they will have the nerve to joke about their like past. You know, like I was in this gift shop and there's this baseball cap that I saw saying the KGB. Are they watching us now? You know,
Yeah.
and I'm going. That's what we need, man. You know, like I feel like us as Americans hold on to our past and like it freaking happened. It won't happen again.
Yeah,
we're so obsessed with it.
Yeah.
You know, versus like here, and maybe this is just my first impression of that, but it was just neat to like see this going like, hey, you know, it happened, but we move on, and we can joke about it, you know.
Yeah, and I think you're right when we say obsessed. You know, like we're really obsessed with our past, and maybe that comes from all the the history teachers and like American history. But out here, I think they realized that the past was very bad. Like it was very bad, and it was like conflict, war, people dying. They had maybe some of these people are related to people who had entire families die out, and like genocides and things like that. And it makes you kind of appreciate how American history, as dark as it is, pales in comparison to the egregiousness that you saw, dominate over Europe and Asia and even Africa and Oceania. These places, man, like you hear about the stories that these people tell you, and it just. Well, one of my roommates, he was Macedonian, and his father was in the Yugoslav war at some point, and he was telling us stories about him in combat and how some of the things that his father did, and it makes you think like how really lucky we are in some ways, but how we just need to kind of learn the fact that there's places that are a whole lot more. They have their history, and it's a lot more violent and and discriminatory and all of these words, man. We can keep throwing these words in, but even to this day, there's jokes made about different nationalities and stuff, and you can actually, if you think about it, you can see where it's rooted from, because there was a lot of conflict in Europe, and like even to this day, the French and the Germans, as an example, they're kind of like the engine of Europe. They keep the European Union kind of running. But even to this day, I mean, some of the students I talk to, they don't hate each other, but they're kind of just like, well, the history's there and can't really do much about it. But I think the EU has a bright future, whereas the US really has to take a hard look at itself and kind of like learn these lessons of like, the past is bad. The past was pretty bad. It's really interesting to learn about. But it was pretty shit, Excuse my language.
Yeah, no, all good. I mean, part of it too is that I feel like in the U.S., I feel like history isn't as incorporated and shown in everyday life as it is here. And I know that the East Coast, from where I've been, has a lot of that going on, like where, you have older buildings and sometimes you have reenactments and things like that. But here, it's just all around you all the time.
Yeah, it's another level. It's totally another level.
I think that knowing your past and your history is imperative. I
couldn't agree more.
Because it tells you a lot about what makes us who we are, and the more we know about ourselves, the more that we can improve, So I think that that's huge. But there was actually one thing that I wanted to like bring up earlier.
Sure.
When I was in Dresden, everything was so modern, as if. Well, so when I had heard about how there were a lot of the bombings and how most of Dresden was just torn apart in this Second World War, and you could see that in like more of that modern architecture like everywhere, and some of the palaces that they had too, like there were a lot of refurbishments done to them.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just neat that they rebuilt and they just keep going. You know,
Yeah.
it's
Yep.
just like wow, you know.
And I remember the other day we were at the museum, and remember when we looked in the thing, like inside that thing, and the building was blown up.
Yeah,
That was the one bomb that I think the Americans accidentally dropped on Prague because they were looking for Dresden, or maybe it was the British. I don't know which one it was, but they blew up basically where the dancing house is. I don't know if he took you there. The dancing house is like this building that's like got this cool glass like kind of shape to it.
Okay.
But that was the building that literally got accidentally bombed. Like it was destroyed. But I mean, we're kind of reaching the end here. But I don't know if there's anything else you want to mention. Like any, like what sticks out to you, man? Like your first impression is like, you know.
My first impression is perseverance and immersion. Holy cow, you know, those are the things that really pop out to me. I think it's great that there's an amalgamation of all these different cultures and just how the EU is just all these different countries and cultures and mindsets.
And they mix so much.
And then they mix so much, and it's very, very intimate, you know?
Yeah, it is.
And
it is.
just perseverance as in, like, you know, hey, the past is the past, but whining about it will not change it. We need to do something now.
It's almost like they recognize the past and how even countries in the EU, they don't like each other, but they'll be like, let's not deal with that, you know, like let's just work together. And I think Americans have a lot to learn from this type of attitude, you know, where it's like, I don't like this person, I don't like their politics, I don't like, you know, in Europe's case, it's like, okay, I don't even like the country, I don't like the language, I don't like the culture, but it's still like, business is business. We work together. And I think the polarization we see in the U.S. is a direct result of people just not caring about that anymore. And I think we need that back.
No, I remember that we were talking about this earlier too, like how there aren't any like big projects, big nationwide projects in the U.S. going on.
Yep.
You know, and
Europe has some of these. Some. I mean, we actually, you know, not to cut you off, but we actually could do these big projects a lot better than they could because we're more centralized. Like, we could just get it done. They have more, like, analogous, maybe is the word, but, like, kind of like big picture things that are harder to implement. Like, green energy, they're trying to do more of. I think, like, that's just one example of, like, a cross-EU thing. But, yeah.
Yeah, no, I just think that this is such a great opportunity for me, and just getting to like see the Czech countryside too, that was so neat, you know.
Yeah.
And just like I feel like it's also kind of different that all, as you said, all of that wealth is in more of the capitals and in those big populated areas, and as you fan out farther and farther, it gets to be more rural and more not necessarily isolated, but more rural, you know.
I don't know if you saw on the train or on the bus, but like the villages are very like compact, and then there's big fields around them, and then there's the next village, and that is a huge hand, I think, in the health of a society. You know, I mean, like these people are always, you know, they're seeing each other, and people need that sense of community. I think, especially in the U.S., man, like. People have lost their community values. Like it's really sad to see, and it's across all demographics and people groups and like areas. And you know, even where I live in the U.S., everything's very spread out. You know, everything's a lot bigger and like spread out. And in Europe, it's very much like, okay, like here's the town, and they always have a Black Death monument here in Prague or in the Czech Republic, in all their little towns. They have a Black Death monument. Because, you know, it was like a monumental tragedy. Yeah. And it was 700 years ago, but people still are taught about it. But it's just strange. Like how in America, I feel like the towns kind of meld into each other. Whereas here, it's very much like, this is town A, this is town B. And it's like, there's a hard line between the two. Exactly. So that's another thing that's like, that popped out to me.
Yeah, no, I would definitely come back here. You know, I think it's great that the community values are here. I think that if we take these same ideas and implement them back at home, people would be so much happier,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and more not necessarily uniform, but more willing to cooperate, you know, and I just think that we could use more of that back at home, you know. So,
Hell yeah, man.
absolutely. So,
All right. Well, unless you want to say anything else, I suppose that's about the time. But yeah. Cheers,
hey,
man.
dude.
Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, man.
Anytime, man. Anytime. Guys, watch out for the next one. Cheers. Peace out.
Cheers.
See ya. Bye-bye.